30 years ago, something arrived on the British music scene that changed our whole approach to pop. It's the compilation album that sold an astonishing 95 million copies in the UK. That's 4 times more than the Beatles.
It wasn't something that we ever dreamt or thought would be possible.
It's like a snapshot of our youth.
There's so much on there just to spark emotion. I guess this is a soundtrack to everyone's life.
It kick-started the careers of our favourite artists.
Track 1, side 1, and that's just like...
And got us listening to all sorts of people we'd never have heard of.
Camouflage Dan Ridgway.
Kingmaker, 10 Years a Sleep.
Eugene Wilde, Gonna Get You Home Tonight. But that's on the same album as Peter Gabriel's Sledgehammer. That's the beauty of now.
And it ain't stopping.
If it goes into hundreds, then maybe it's got like eternal life and it's stronger than any of us.
Other music series may have bitten the dust, but now That's What I Call Music goes from strength to strength. It's essential, indispensable. It may have entered our DNA.
Last year, the last 12 now is just to have, just in my DJ collection, just for if you're DJing at a party or a friend's house, they're just the best records because there's so much on there just to spark emotion.
Cats in the Cradle. Cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. Goes like that. Brilliant track.
Don't call me baby, you got some love that I'll never do.
Track 1, side 1, Sledgehammer, Peter Gabriel.
Oasis, Roll With It. I used to stand in my room blaring it, pretending I've got a guitar in my hands, sending it back to that tune again.
See, people just laugh at these, but this is history, social history.
You're not getting this back.
But in a far-off galaxy a long time ago called the 1970s, there were no nows, and compilation records were a whole weird world unto themselves.
In the early days, I used to buy compilations.
I mean, that's what, certainly for me as a 14-year-old, I wanted.
Top of the Pops. Do you remember them? Look at the lovely lady.
Oh my God.
What is she doing?
I can't actually work out what she is doing there. Like she's got some kind of straw and a Brit Award.
That looks like music to have Rudy's too.
And there's a woman there with her bum out.
I mean, what do you want me to say? It's a bit sexy, isn't it?
So if you were a kind of, impressionable youngster and you went and you think, oh, I love all those tracks, they're amazing, look at them all on one record, and you get them home, put the record on, there you go, and then you get something glorious, like this.
Stand and deliver!
It just doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound...
Oh my God.
What is that?
I don't recognise it. Is it not who is meant to be singing it? Is it not suitably... I thought I didn't recognise it.
Well, first of all, the guy singing it sounds about 10 years older than Adamant of the early 1980s.
And these were like bad cover versions.
So they couldn't afford to get the originals, so they got other people to sing them. That's a good idea. They do that a lot in Asia.
That's a bit deep. That means they didn't really have to pay them.
What's going on? They had scab musicians? That's terrible.
The thing that I think is fascinating is how they got away with using the Top of the Pops logo, which presumably the BBC owned but didn't copyright.
But nowhere on this record does it tell you that they're not the original artists.
I can't believe that they got away with not putting the artist titles and actually blagging people that they were going to get the real song.
Top of the Pops records ran for 17 years from 1968, and in 1971 even managed to top the album charts. They were a sly marketing ploy dreamed up by Pickwick Records, who brought out several imitation compilations a year.
So the charts would come out on a Tuesday lunchtime. You'd listen to Johnny Walker on Radio 1 doing the chart rundown, and by Tuesday afternoon, they've worked out which tracks they're going to record, and on Wednesday, in they go. You get a bunch of session musicians, and they just play through the entire top 20 on Wednesday afternoon.
By the end of the day, this album would be recorded in one day and would be at the factory, and on the weekend would be in the shops for sale.
It was the equivalent of people when a very posh frock comes out for a sort of 400 quid, and like immediately, like sweatshops in Taiwan are just going and making a knockoff copy they can chuck in, and that's what these were.
They're not the original singers for that. So how do they do that? Is that not illegal? These were being sold to children. Who do they think were buying them? And you could buy the calendar on the back. Amazing, really.
Ronco presents Rock and Roller Disco.
Soon there were compilations with recordings by original artists, but from companies like K-Tel and Ronco, who made their names selling cheap household gadgets.
Ronco, only $4.99.
They would sell things that would get lint off your sleeves. They would have the button ear.
Now get the automatic button ear. Button ear attaches thick buttons, thin buttons, even shank buttons, and they'll never fall off.
And they also did, if I remember right, record cleaners.
Introducing the amazing record vacuum by Ronco, the stereo accessory that protects all your records. Simply insert your record into a record vacuum and it rotates automatically, sweeping and vacuuming your records instantly. So when they applied their same marketing prowess to records, Ronco Presents, they advertised them in exactly the same way.
Disco Inferno.
But they were the first to actually run the titles of the track, so you'd see this list of these fabulous artists rolling before you.
Non-stop disco, giving you more of what you're funkin' for. Disco Inferno, out now from K-Tel.
With K-Tel, any time that they would get a hit record from a record company, the record company would insist on putting, four other tracks from bands that nobody had heard of, just so they could try to recoup their royalties. So the qualities of the albums were never that great.
The key was that they had the television marketing, and both of these records make a big point that they are as seen on TV.
But there was a man who was going to save us from all these horrible compilation records. Enter Richard Branson.
You make everything.
He set up a student magazine, a series of record shops, and a record label, with a difference. No one wore suits.
Wild thing, think I love you.
And Richard auditioned hairy new acts in his office.
How many else are there of you in the group?
Well, basically there's 5.
In the bizarre world of pop, Branson perceives money, where others see only madness.
Yes, the Virgin started off as a hippie company.
They worked out of strange offices off Portobello Road.
A bunch of people who absolutely loved music.
If you saw any of the staff, lovely lads that they were, they had more hair than I've ever had in my life on my head.
It was very kind of almost like a family, or just very friendly people.
It was a bit of a ramshackle place as well. All the deliveries of records would come in and they'd sit in reception and you'd have to sort of step over them.
And on Friday nights, everyone used to go to the pub and Richard Branson would be there and everyone would just have a party. Richard never had any money, actually. He never had any cash. He was a bit like the Queen in that respect.
We signed the kinds of bands we liked and the kinds of bands that everybody else rejected.
They started off with Mike Oldfield in '73 and signed a lot of hippie acts like Gong and Tangerine Dream and things like that.
And so, this company that became Now Music, Virgin, started so left field, it is unbelievable.
And then I think the thing that really turned the company around was signing the Sex Pistols. And I think the Sex Pistols put Virgin on the map.
But after the Sex Pistols, the real commercial breakthrough for Virgin was the signing of the former drummer of a prog rock band, Phil Collins. Who in 1981 had a massive #1 album, Face Value, and followed it in 1983 with a huge #1 single.
My mama said you can't hurry love. No, you just have to wait.
You Can't Hurry Love ushered in a whole raft of hits for Virgin in 1983. Human League followed up Don't You Want Me Baby with 2 #2s.
Feeling fascination, passion burning, love so strong. Come, chameleon.
New signings Culture Club went straight to the top of the charts with Karma Chameleon. And UB40 also made it to #1 with the classic Red Red Wine.
And Virgin was heading to become the most successful independent record label in the world, and it wasn't something that we ever dreamt or thought would be possible.
With all that success, people came knocking on Virgin's door, namely those masters of cheap compilations, K-Tel.
As we had our hit record, K-Tel would ring us up and say, we would like to put your hit records out on an album, and I got fed up with that.
And I just said to him, can't we do this?
So we just thought we'd like to, take it from them and do it ourselves, and do it with a bit of style and class and panache.
For me, it made absolute perfect sense that they would try and reinvent the compilation album, and that's certainly something that Richard Branson has done throughout his career. He took something that was already in the marketplace, but used his knowledge to just twist it a little bit and make it better.
Fired up by this idea, Branson joined forces with label giant EMI. But one question remained: what to call this new compilation? Well, the answer to that question lies in the intricacies of Richard Branson's love life, and it all started at his country recording studio, The Manor, where he seems to have spent a lot of time half naked.
How much leader do we put on? No, I'll put the leader. I mean, how much of this stuff do we put on?
I'd walked into a recording studio. We have a recording studio called The Manor, which is the first sort of country recording studio. And I saw this lady in the kitchen, who was the most beautiful person I'd seen in my life. And I started chasing her. And I found out that she was an assistant shopkeeper in a bric-a-brac shop called Dodo's. Every day I would sneak off work, and her very wily boss would only let me in if I bought something.
And he bought, for Simon Draper, boss of Virgin Records at the time, a poster which was a Danish bacon advert from 1930s of a pig looking over the wall at a chicken. And it was saying, now that's what I call music.
That poster was on Simon's office wall, and it was always just quite a funny little thing.
So we was having one of the meetings deciding where we could go with this project, and one of the things that came out, of course, was, what do we call it? Now that's what I call music. That'll do, won't it?
And even more importantly, I managed to win Joan, the shop assistant, and she's now the mother of my children, so a lot of good things came that year.
With Now's title in place, it was time for the great leap forward for compilation records. And in November '83, Virgin and EMI unveiled their plans, appointing former Ronco employee Ashley Abram to compile the album, and taking a leaf out of K-Tel's TV marketing strategy, splashed what was then a whopping £500,000 on an ad campaign that launched the very first Now.
Tell me now, that's what I call music. Right, that's the name of the album, right?